Welcome to Power Lunch Live. I'm Rhett Power, your host. It's good to be with you here. We're almost at the end of August. It's hard to believe that. Hope you're staying safe and healthy wherever you are today. The Power Lunch Live is a program about bringing on today's thought leaders, best-selling authors, CEOs, people who are doing amazing work in the world that we can learn from so that we can get better at what we do. That's the whole point of the show. Now, this show is live. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, I think a couple other platforms, Twitch, maybe something else. But we do monitor this program with those feeds during the show. And if you have questions, we like to interact with our audience. We like to answer those questions live. So please do get on that keyboard and ask your questions. That is why we're here. Now, today I've got Brenda Schmidt. Brenda is a serial entrepreneur, speaker, educator, and CEO of Coplex. I hope I pronounced that right. That is a startup studio that partners with corporations to build businesses to create a better future. She's a builder focused on driving innovation through technology with a particular interest in social impact. We're going to talk about that today. Brenda, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Rhett. Glad to be here.
So we're in really weird times. I think anyway. I've certainly never seen anything. The world's never seen anything quite like this. So talk about Coplex a little bit and what you guys do and how you're helping entrepreneurs and startups.
Yeah, I think what we recognize, especially for large corporate enterprises, there's a lot of energy and attention and strategic imperative around innovation, and you hear a lot about disruption. But large enterprise, just their DNA and just sort of crushing bureaucracy really doesn't allow them to successfully commercialize and execute against an innovation strategy that's very far from their core, primarily because it doesn't align with the business unit who has the P&L and operational key performance indicators that are hitting those quarterly or annual targets. And so we partner with those companies to take their best ideas, typically pretty disruptive ideas, and say, let's get them out from under the governance of the enterprise and spin them out as separate C Corps to add enterprise value. So that's what we're doing. And we think it's really the best way for large enterprise to innovate.
You're really connected to the startup scene. Are startups making it right now? Are they surviving? What's happening?
Yeah, I think especially with COVID, it depends on the startup. You've got some that have a tremendous amount of regulatory tailwinds, telehealth. We have an online notary, a sort of a remote notary service, huge tailwinds. We've got a nursing matching two-sided marketplace to place nurses. So things like that really actually took off during COVID. Anybody in the restaurant, event planning, video, those types of businesses who had a tremendous amount of potential have been significantly impacted. Where we've seen companies thrive is early on when they realized, as startups do, gosh, I have to pivot, and I have to pivot fast. And those folks that were able to really pivot early to understand how they could leverage their business model potentially to a different audience or modify their product actually have done well. We haven't seen just crushing devastation in the startup community.
Okay. What kind of companies made that pivot really well? Are there a couple of examples that really hit it out of the park when they made that change?
Yeah, I'm most familiar with the ones in healthcare, but certainly the telehealth folks who a lot of chat bots. So somebody may have had a chat bot that was helping with a different type of symptom checker or customer service focused chat bots. And immediately they went and said, I'm going to try to reduce the amount of call volume to a health system or a health plan by having an automated chat bot COVID symptom checker. And then the health plans and the health systems were like, here's your $500,000 contract, because I would rather ask for forgiveness and permission because we got to do this now. And so the buyers typically had long sales cycles, realized that they had to make much quicker decisions. And those folks who were able to understand the opportunity quickly. So I think a lot of it came down to leadership. The folks that kind of went in their hole and just laid everybody off and just kind of were the ones that were impacted the most.
You kind of hit on it a little bit, and I hate to go back to the same kind of question, but looking at the crystal ball, we had a lot of companies that came out of the 2008 recession, like Uber and Airbnb. Are there any particular types of businesses? I know you talked about healthcare and things like that, that you think will come out of this crisis. I mean, are there any new industry? I mean, no, telehealth is one, and it's something that's catching on a lot, getting a lot of traction right now. Are there any other kind of really disruptive things that you think might come out of this?
What I'm seeing in the market isn't necessarily, healthcare is being disruptive or gas and oil is being disruptive. What's happening is this intersectionality where the technologies around artificial intelligence and machine learning and how to use data, those capabilities are pretty ubiquitous across different industries. And the folks that are building platforms that solve those types of, kind of blocking and tackling type of business process automation, anything that's on a spreadsheet should be digitized. So it's definitely this movement around digital business models that can help people efficiently do their jobs better, especially now with COVID where staffing is reduced. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a particular industry. It's those startups that can help solve those big problems for across a variety of verticals.
I was talking to Rob Nail, who used to be the CEO of Singularity the other day, and he was talking about that, AI at some point very soon will be able to do almost everything the CEO does, right?
I hope not.
That his goal is to build a robot or a machine that could do 70% of what he does. But I think that's interesting that the companies that are solving some of those automation and data problems. I mean that's where it's headed, right?
The other is around human capital. I mean, early on you mentioned Uber. I mean, it was really this sort of gig economy. How are we supporting workers that aren't necessarily, W-2 employees in a standard industry for a long time? So there's a lot of human capital payment type models that are also emerging to support this new type of worker and new type of gig economy. And I think that's interesting as well. So that's kind of happening on the insurtech, or not insurtech, fintech side. So those are the interesting types of emerging models that COVID is also impacting. A lot of two-sided matching platforms, from everything from safety workers to construction workers to healthcare workers to, you name it. But then that creates its own challenge of how can those workers validate the hours worked and get paid sooner than typically a large corporate might go through that process. So there's a lot of interesting tangential businesses that are being developed because of some of the impact that COVID has had on large and startup businesses.
Do you think that that's going to have, you just said large and kind of startup stuff, but what about that small and medium enterprise? Is it going to impact that sector as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. That's where we're seeing a lot of the conversation around innovation. I mean, you picture the Fortune 500 have been dabbling, some successfully. The Amazon, Googles, the Walmarts of the world have been both exploiting and exploring at the same time. But we're seeing that go down into that middle market. Like, honestly, the $20 to $200 million company, typically in service industries, air conditioning, furniture, that are like, gosh, we have got to innovate or we're going to die. And so I think there's a lot of energy in those types of organizations trying to figure out how they can take their services model and really either spin out products or digital business models, realizing that they just can't, they're not going to survive. Startups are just going to eat their lunch.
Yeah, no, they're going to completely be disrupted, right? I mean, why would you go to a couch store anymore, right?
And look at mattresses, right? Like now there's a bunch of them, and exactly the thought of going and laying on a bunch of mattresses in a strip mall just seems really outdated.
It really does. And I mean, it's sort of that evolution, right? I mean, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, though, if I was ever going to buy pants or shoes online, I probably would have said, I doubt it. I like to go to the store and pick the shoes and pick the pants, or the jacket. But you don't need to anymore, right? Because they've made it so easy.
What's been fascinating to me, it's growing up and older I get, is, there were these mom and pop Main Street stores. And then they went to the big box stores, and then they went to malls. And so now you've got all of the online shopping on, but there's almost this resurgence of the specialty store. And it could be a specialty online store, but gardening or a specific kind of shoe. And I think that's really interesting, is this sort of, now that you have the platforms that support the really specialized specialty, areas, that I think that's been a fascinating trend as well, that it's not sort of generic merchandise, that the folks have been able to carve out a specific niche, whether that's a home delivery service or an online store, I think are also doing really well. All these whatever in a box, subscription services.
I was fascinated, but when COVID hit, I got involved with helping promote this small business, medium-sized business organization was trying to get people online and help some of these small businesses get their products online. And some of them really knocked it out of the park. There are two examples. One was a bakery in Miami, and she had a really great reputation. And so people started asking her to ship the product. And now she's got a whole shipping operation, and she's shipping all over the country. She's shipping pastries and different things all over the place. And then there was a lady up north who's got, she was well known for dog grooming, but she also had this sort of side business of specialty clothing for pets. Right now she's completely online, and I think she's knocking it out of the park as well. And it's fascinating to see some of these transitions. But yeah, I think you're right. What is how important do you think a company's social mission is going to be going forward? I mean, I get the sense there's sort of this monumental shift to, and I know I've seen it in my own habits, where if a CEO or somebody in the company or the company itself does something that I don't agree with, and I have a hard time going and spending money with that company. How important is that going to be, sort of your social mission and your sort of your identity, and then what you do, what the CEO does? How important is that right now?
I think it's really critically important. I mean, I have to believe that people just don't get up every morning and they're driven by, I'm going to make a bunch of money. I mean, I think whether you're a large corporation or you're a small startup, you have to have some, I'm trying to do, it's all the old Silicon Valley change the world, but you've got to have some true north that gets you up every day to say, I'm doing this to make a better world, and however you may define that. So I think large companies call it corporate social responsibility and those types of things. But I do, and that's a lot of around environmental sustainability and things like that. But I think recently that whole conversation, including diversity and inclusion and culture, and what are we actually doing at the end of the day other than making a lot of money? And if we are making a lot of money, what are we doing with it? I think right. is definitely becoming elevated right now. And I think it's critically important. It's why you get up every day. And
I think people are going to make purchasing decisions based on that, right?
I do too.
We have so much more access to information now, and if the CEO does something, egregious, it's like, well,
it's all over the internet. It's all over the social channels. But look at Tom's shoes. Even that was early on, where you buy a pair of shoes, and we're gonna and I don't know that anybody would have flocked to buy those particular shoes if they weren't bought into the social mission of the company, and that every purchase was going to do some good in the world. So I do think that's becoming more prevalent and expected.
Yeah, definitely. What how is private equity and VC funding changed, and how is it going to change because of COVID? It can't be the same old thing. It can't be the same. We can't be in the same normal place we were 6 months ago. I mean, how is that changing, you think? And
yeah, there's still a lot of money out there. People that have raised these funds have to spend the capital. And so I think that I haven't seen a tremendous amount of drying up of institutional capital in the market. No, I really haven't. People have funds and they want to spend that money, and the sooner they spend that money, I think that they're refining their bets based on some of, again, the regulatory tailwinds and these emerging industries like you discussed. But I think valuations have changed. As soon as the market looked like it was going down, all of a sudden I've seen company valuations, the expectation of what your company is worth at those early, seed day before you've actually proven yourselves. I think
no more 10 times.
Yeah. Those days are over. But there's a lot of dry powder and money's kind of fungible out there. So I see the VC firms competing for the best startups by adding more operating partners or operational. What can you do for me other than money becomes a lot of the conversation with that, because there's a lot of money out there. So I do think valuations have been impacted, but the capital is still available.
Okay. So we've got a question from Jagadesh, I think. Let's see. He asked, it would be better procure WFH kits ready, reduce the infrastructure cost. I'm not sure I understand that. I don't know if that makes sense to me, but if you want to clarify that question, Jagadesh, please do. So what scares you in the market right now?
What scares me in the market? What scares me the most is I'm hoping this becomes an inflection point that really can drive, especially, my whole background has been in healthcare, and now, at Coplex, are certainly expanded beyond that. But I hope we just don't go back to normal. There are people who are going, let's just get back to elective surgery. Let's just get back to making our balance sheet healthy. I'm hoping people really take this to as an inflection point to make some significant changes, as opposed to let's just get through this and let's just kind of go back to normal. Because I do think that there's an opportunity to have this be a pretty significant inflection point. Like you mentioned, after 2008, people had to do things differently. Now, there will be some survivors and folks who don't survive, but I'm not sure the conversation around how to really disrupt some of those industries like healthcare is happening as much as it needs to be happening right now, either policy, regulation, or the incumbent players in the market.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. What for you, are there a couple companies that you can talk about? I don't know that you're involved in or that you're seeing that you're excited about.
Yeah, there's all kinds that I'm excited about. I like platforms. I mean, I am a huge sort of platform service. So I'm really bullish on companies that can take very noisy spaces. And this is what I did at Solera, where I was before Coplex, and saying, how do you take all of these disparate point solutions or points of contact and put them on a platform to get information and analytics that you can use moving forward. So some of those examples are all of the telehealth companies that have sprung up in therapy area of verticals. So you do my foot, you do my eyes, you might do my mental health. I've got my primary care. Where's the aggregated data, like an electronic medical record that's organizing all of that data? It doesn't exist. Yeah. Oh, they're not in Epic. They're not in these big hospital or medical provider EMRs. They're sitting in these, sometimes homegrown, I'm on Zoom, right? Doing my therapy, and then where's that going? So I love that kind of big platform play. The other place is I was talking to a health plan around, all of the communications that you may send me as my health plan or my doctor or all of these different vendors that you may use. Where's the CRM that is saying in my life, the life cycle of that person, how have you outreach to me? What action did I take, and what was the outcome of that action that actually impacted my care? Like where's that CRM? And so I like to think big aggregated platform data plays. Those are the kinds of things that get excited. Now, those aren't the little, nimble MVP startups that we typically get pushed through early days at Coplex, but those are the kinds of things that when somebody comes and says, hey, I want to aggregate this, not necessarily disintermediate, but look what Amazon did, and not like they allowed small players. Netflix did the same thing, right? And all of a sudden, small studios have a platform to reach a broad audience of consumers. I really like those platform plays.
How do you? That's actually fascinating because I think, let's say counseling and therapy. I mean, so much of it is going to these kind of conversations like this, right? Not broadcast on LinkedIn, but I mean, a lot of counseling and a lot of coaching and and you do have to wonder about where do those recordings go? You have to wonder about the security of that, right?
Yeah.
How are they securing that kind of data?
Well, I mean, Zoom and most of the telehealth platforms now, they're HIPAA compliant, so they're encrypted, and while we're yeah, so they're secure. What the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services did is allowed more interoperability of that data and loosened up the regulations, especially around payment. But to your point, the platform that we're doing therapy on, as an example, may be secure. Where's that data stored? How is that provider? Where is it? Who's protecting?
It's no longer just in the it's no longer in the file box at my therapist office. It's
right.
Somewhere, right?
Well, and that's applied to the whole Internet of Things. I think, all of the data that you're generating on a daily basis, whether that's from your wearable or your phone or other types of medium, is all going somewhere. And I think that the power of harnessing that data is just incredible. But then with, comes responsibility for who's the watchdog over that data. And I think some of those are some of the big tech conversations that are happening around Google and Amazon, and why there's concern about those organizations getting into health, because they know so much about you already. And if they can marry all of the data they have around your buying habits and your credit scores and all of that married with your health data, it's kind of frightening. It's a little frightening.
Do we just have to let go of that, though?
I think what we have to do is give people more ownership of their data. I always said, how come I can't, now this is going to date me, but how come I can't walk around with all of my data on a thumb drive or something where it's up to me?
My wearable.
So it's up to me who gets access to my data. It's not up to the people collecting the data to say who gets to buy or have access to that data. I think people would be shocked to find out who has access to their data. 3 and 4 times removed. And so I think it should be, I wish we would flip it and have me be able, and this is the promise of blockchain, right? I get to decide who gets access to what parts of my data, and I can parse that out, and I could potentially sell that. I mean, there are companies out there brokering in my DNA, right? Like they will, but I get to decide, not somebody else gets to decide. And I'm hoping that consumerism moves all the way over into some of these big data plays, because I don't have control over, I've got my privacy and security settings, but that's a tiny little piece of protecting the data that folks might be collecting.
And I don't think people often understand how much we're volunteering, right? Just a Google search or a post on Facebook, and you're giving them data.
You're looking at settings on your phone, right? I mean, remember when we were looking at COVID and who was actually being locked down, and movements of people, because they're tracking exactly where you go all the time.
I guess I've kind of come to the realization, you know what? You got it. You're going to get it. I'm not going to, I'm going to be, I'm going to use this phone, and it is what it is. And so
I don't have a Facebook though, not for privacy. It was more around, and this was before I even knew how to set privacy settings and things like that. But I didn't want people posting things that I couldn't control about me to the world. Like that was just a weird concept to me, that I wasn't in control of what photo or tag or something. Now it's, you can certainly restrict it as much as you want, but there's that just always was unsettling to me a little bit.
Do you think that's going to be the barrier to growth of those kind of businesses?
What, the personal,
the data, the personal data? I mean, if the decision point of if I'm going to a therapist or I'm going to a doctor, and it's I'm doing it over Zoom or whatever the platform is, and I make it. I mean, I know a lot of people that would just say, you know what, I don't want that video of that call recorded. So
I don't think people are really thinking about it. I think that if they think about, I'm going to my doctor, they've got this figured out, and there are regulations that are probably protecting that. And until I haven't even seen an impact on these huge breaches. I mean, there have been major privacy breaches, and I haven't seen it actually change consumer behavior. Yeah. People want convenience.
Yeah. So maybe that wins the day.
Yeah. Convenience and the user experience trumps, security concerns.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, this has actually been really fascinating. I'm going to have you back on if you don't mind one day. I do panels on these things on this platform quite a bit, and I'm sure this is not the last time we're going to be talking about data and security and this kind of growth and what people see. So this was a real pleasure. Thank you, Brenda.
Thanks, Rhett. Take care.
Now, how can they find you at Coplex?
Yeah, Brenda at Coplex.com, Coplex. I'm super active on LinkedIn, so look me up, Brenda Schmidt on LinkedIn as well.
Fantastic. Hopefully people will do that. And thank you for spending some time today on Power Lunch Live. You can check out the schedule. Now, we're off next week. We've been off this week as well. This was a special program today. We're going to come back September with a full schedule, 3 days a week, Tuesday through Thursday at 12 noon. You can see the upcoming schedule at powerlunch.live. You guys have a great day. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in September.